How's it going, YouTube? My name is LB Ninja7, your resident Mistweaver monk and favorite WoW healing YouTuber. And guys, today we're actually talking about Shaman, but don't click off the video if you do not play Shaman. I don't play Shaman, so don't worry about that. This is not a guide, even though I have one pulled up. Today we are actually going to be doing a deep dive on Shaman right now because it is being touted as the best, above all else, healer of all the healing specs. So we're going to do a deep dive, look at what makes a healing class the #1 spec. So let's do that. But before we jump into it, we're going to look at some of these videos. So Mad Skills, you look at his tier list. Shaman right there in second place. This is his raid healing tier list, up there in S tier, so it's got to be good. His Mythic Plus, it is #1 up in S tier. And then we look at Jack's Mythic Plus healing tier list, it is up in #1. And then we look at Jack's raid healing tier list, it is also up in #1 in S tier. So yeah, it is getting a ton of hype. So let's go ahead and kind of jump into what makes Shaman so good. We have Tidebringer. Tidebringer is kind of like the biggest change that they've received that kind of started the snowball effect. So basically they were having an issue where if you were to cast Chain Heal on a target that was out in Narnia, taking a lot of damage in a raid, you would hope that you would get your full Chain Heal, that it would bounce between as many targets as it can, but it would only hit that one target and it just wouldn't jump to people because they were out of range of other people. So this doubles that range and just kind of fixes that issue and just allowed people to kind of lean more heavily into Chain Heal. Now, on top of that, there are all of these other buffs to Chain Heal that you can add. So all of a sudden, you are getting 10% extra healing. You are getting 8% extra healing. You are getting 20% extra healing and 15% extra healing. So you're stacking all of these healing buffs on top of each other, and it is just making Chain Heal slap. It is making Chain Heal amazing. So their only big AoE option in their base kit is now just a very powerful button to press. So that's a lot of healing, but a lot of the healing specs do a lot of healing. There are a lot of throughput specs, so why does this one stand out a little bit more than some of the others? Well, here are their cooldowns. They have 3 pretty big raid cooldowns, and this is being nice. I mean, they have some other very powerful cooldowns, but Healing Tide Totem. Healing Tide Totem is kind of your weaker version of Trank or Salve, or it's just a throughput cooldown, but it gets the job done. It's not as strong as some of the others, but once we couple it with the other cooldowns that they have, you can kind of look at how Shaman is very strong because it has many different options. So Spirit Link Totem, it is not the beast that it used to be back in Shadowlands, but it's still very good. And especially when we take into account that this 10% damage reduction that you're going to be applying to your whole raid in some instances, and sometimes not everyone's going to be stacked up perfectly, but 10% damage reduction when everyone's taking 25% more damage this tier is very valuable. And it's also just a great protection for big slaps, big hit mechanics, because you can share your health pool with your tanks and your more tanky classes. And then Ascendance, yeah, you guys can see it. It duplicates all of your healing for 15 seconds. It does a lot of healing. It just adds a lot more to your throughput. So all of a sudden, you just have a really competitive throughput spec, and they have great utility. So Spirit Link Totem and some of the other spells, which would be like Windrush Totem, which I didn't even have on here. Windrush Totem, you have Ankh, so you just have so many buttons that you bring to your raid that only Shamans can bring. So just very powerful for a throughput spec. I mean, you look at Druids and why they're so good, and it's because they're a throughput spec, but they can also bring a cat roar. Well, you know, Shamans don't have to go into their Ghost Wolf form or their cat form. They just drop down a totem, everyone runs through it and gets speed. So next up is their tier set. So when you cast Healing Rain, each ally with your Riptide, which is your hot that you are casting, it's kind of like your Renewing Mist. You can get 2 charges of it and just keep applying it. Each ally with your Riptide on them is healed by an extra amount. And it's been buffed a bit, so it's now a pretty nice heal. But you're already pressing these 2 buttons. Healing Rain and Riptide are core in your rotation. So all of a sudden, you're not pressing any new buttons. You're not forced to deviate from your normal rotation, and you're just getting a benefit, an added bonus to your healing. Great in raid. That's even more throughput, kind of catching them back up to the other throughput gods like Resto Druid and Preservation Evoker. And then we look at our 4-piece. Each ally healed by that extra amount increases your healing done by 1% for 6 seconds and increases the healing of your next healing wave, healing surge, or chain heal. Now it's smaller than the others, but it is the AoE one. So just another stack onto that big chain heal whip that you can crack at any moment. So that is kind of what makes it great in raids. So they're already called up in throughput. They are now a big throughput powerhouse, but they just bring a lot more utility than some of the other throughput classes. So that is kind of everything about their raid healing that they can do. So already they're just toward the top of the throughput gods of the raid. But now let's look at their Mythic Plus. And now for a class to be truly the meta class, you do want it to be strong in both Mythic Plus and in raid, because if it's only strong in one and not strong in the other, then it's not going to get brought as much in the other, and it's going to kind of lose out on gear, and just overall the perception is just going to be low on it. But when it's strong in both is when it really shines in a meta, and that's why Resto Druid and Preservation Evoker were so strong last year. But what makes it so strong in Mythic Plus, and guys, this is actually truly where it shines. It's going to be great in raid, and you're going to see it quite a lot in raid, especially compared to season 1, but Mythic Plus is where it's truly going to shine. So in Mythic Plus, it brings something very important in the fact that it brings lust. It brings bloodlust, and you always want a bloodlust in your group. You can go without if you truly want to go on hard mode, but you always want a bloodlust. We all know that, so I didn't even put it up here. But let's talk about the new affixes that are coming. So we're going to have Afflicted, so we're going to spawn an Afflicted Soul, and it's going to have a debuff on it, and we're going to have to decurse it. Or we can, or we're going to have to dispel it or decurse it. And we're going to have to do that or heal it. Now, where Shaman kind of laughs at this affix more than any other healer is, one, their heals are very bursty. You can just do a healing surge into it, and it'll chunk one away. But that's not really what you want to do. You don't want to cast too many heals into these, because you can just use one global cooldown and cover this affix entirely, and that is Poison Cleansing Totem. Now guys, this is absolutely insane and kind of disgusting that they probably didn't even think about this when they were implementing the new Afflicted affix. So all it does is every 45 seconds you can summon a totem at your feet, and for the next 6 seconds it'll pulse out 4 pulses that will cleanse everyone around you of poisons. So it will completely laugh at the Afflicted affix. It's so stupid. Entangling, now I didn't put any real indicators here of what kind of tackles this affix, but Entangling is kind of the easiest one of all of them to handle. It's not too difficult for any class really, but Shaman in particular, you can just like wind gust yourself away, or you can just Ghost Wolf and walk away easily, just like Druids can cat form and walk out of it. So, but it's not really worth doing a deep dive on. But then Incorporeal, you're going to spawn some ads that are going to start channeling a cast that can be interrupted, kicked, any amount of CC, and Shaman brings the CC. They have Wind Shear, which is probably the best kick of any healer because it is a ranged one on a very short cooldown. You have Thunderstorm, which is an AoE knockup. Granted, I believe you have to be standing on the ad, but that's really not an issue because you're already out in range. So if these things spawn far away, you just run up to them, Thunderstorm, pop them, all good. And then you have Cap Totem. You do not want to be wasting Cap Totem. It is an AoE stun, so you don't want to use it on the affix. But generally, I mean, it's an AoE stun. You can probably just pull the pack to the affix if it's that big, if you're in a coordinated group. But this is still just another thing that you can do. You can also hex it. They have so many different ways that you can deal with this affix. Just as many as I believe a couple of the other specs. So you're not really dominating this one, but where it really shines is this Afflicted. I mean, some classes do have trouble with this Afflicted, and you probably will see a lot of Shadow Priest brought to kind of help deal with this because they can master spell. But Shamans just absolutely laugh at this every single pull. I mean, it's 45 seconds, and yeah, you can get this off every single pull. It's so dumb. But let's also talk about some of the other utility, not just the new affixes. I mean, that's just how they tackle the new affixes. But what other stuff have they been bringing to Mythic Plus? And if you've watched the MDI recently, Resto Shamans are kind of, the star of that show. So let's talk about some of these changes. And the biggest one, in my opinion, is Earthen Harmony. So they changed it to now your Earth Shield gives a 6% damage reduction. And if you don't know, you just apply Earth Shield at the beginning of the dungeon, and it kind of just stays on permanently. And I guess if they die, you have to reapply it. But you can put that on yourself and on the tank. But having it on the tank is so important because they just for free take 6% less damage, and the higher you go in keys, the bigger the pools you're going to be wanting to do, the tankier you're going to want your tank, and this just allows him to, you know, go that extra mile. And it's something that Shaman's kind of lacked recently, is giving some kind of tank defensive, but now it's not on a cooldown and stronger, it's just permanent and weaker, so it's just very good. You also have Purge, which I don't even have to go into why this is so strong. You can remove one beneficial effect from an enemy, which is great. You also have Ancestral Guidance, which is a cooldown, and I could have brought it up if I wanted to in the raid portion of your cooldowns, but it's just even stronger in Mythic Plus because, you know, it only heals 3 targets, but it heals based on your damage. And in Mythic Plus, you're going to be pumping the damage as much as you can, so you're already getting a lot more value than you would when you press this button in raid, but also 3 targets out of 5 is a lot better than 3 targets out of 20, so it's just very strong in Mythic Plus. So that's, add one more to your plethora of cooldowns that you have to press. And then we, speaking of damage, we have Acid Rain, which now they've kind of shifted around the talent tree, which now this is just even easier to take or to pick up because it's already in your pathing that you would want to go. But this just adds damage. Now your Healing Rain ticks for damage as well. So great on AoE packs, just adds a lot of damage, and it's kind of your go-to damage button in Mythic Plus. And like I said earlier, with your tier set, you already are pressing Healing Rain, so this, having to press this as a damage button really does not change your rotation. It's a button that you would have pressed at the beginning of a pool regardless, so now it's just doing damage. Now also you have Stormkeeper to add damage. Basically your next 2 Chain Lightnings deal 150% more damage, so 2.5 times their normal damage, and they are instant. So you press Stormkeeper, you have to cast it, and then your next 2 chain heals pack a punch, or chain lightnings, I'm sorry, pack a punch and are instant cast. So you just start spamming lightnings. Big AoE damage on a 1-minute cooldown. And then next up is Flow of the Tides. Yes, another chain heal buff, but I do want to mention that it does share a slot with Ancestral Reach, but Ancestral Reach just adds 8% flat healing to your chain heal while also giving an additional bounce, which is just better when you're doing more than 5-man content, and it's just more consistent. Whereas this one, you have to cast it on a target with your Riptide. I'm sorry, I could not think of the word. And it will consume that, kind of like how Swiftman will consume a hot on Resto Druid, but it will consume it and make it do 30% more healing. It's already hitting 5 targets. It will just smack those 5 targets. 30% more healing on top of all these other buffs, and you are just seeing so much healing without any cooldowns expended. So all of a sudden you have all of these cooldowns for healing. You have this cooldown for healing, and now your chain heal, which is, you can spam it if you wanted, but every 8 seconds you're going to be getting this Tidebringer passive, and every 15 seconds you're going to get Unleash Life to buff your next one. I mean, you just get so much healing from a normal button that you're already pressing. It's kind of disgusting. That is kind of all that Shaman does, and guys, I didn't even cover half of it. I mean, they are the Swiss Army knife. Now, if you look at Druids are also a Swiss Army knife because they can shapeshift. They can become other forms and do multiple different spells from all the other classes. But they kind of do healing very well, and then all these other things kind of well. And so that's why when you see Druids very good, they don't dominate quite as much as when you see Shamans good. When Shamans are good, they are great. There's really no in between because they just have so much utility, and when they can do everything else just as good as other healers, they just skyrocket in playability. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you kind of understood more about Shamans if you didn't know anything about it, or why everyone's talking about them so much. You see just how much they are bringing, and hopefully you can think about your class. Like for me, Mistweaver, it kind of lets me know what would I like to see Mistweavers do, or if they do a slight tweak to a talent that kind of brings us more in line to what Shamans can do, then it will let me know that my class is even more viable and I can start to push more. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. It is very different than what I've been doing recently or from the videos that I make, so let me know if you guys liked it down below in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Am I completely wrong? Will Shaman just completely flop? I doubt it. I think it's very good. But guys, thank you so much for the support recently. We are probably going to hit 2,000 subscribers with this video. So guys, I really do appreciate it. I never would have thought that I would get 100 subscribers. I cried that day. I cried when I hit 1,000, and I will cry like as soon as I post this video, because it's just surreal. All your support is just amazing, and I really do appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys hit subscribe. Like I said, I'm growing, and I hope to one day become a bigger YouTuber so that I can do this full time, and your support is really helping me do that. So make sure you guys hit subscribe, like the video if you liked it, and if you're still here, and comment down below just something random. Help the algorithm. You guys know how it works. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.